All right, let's jump right in. We're talking about the Pentateuch, the very first 5 books of the Bible. And look, this isn't just some collection of ancient scrolls. This is the bedrock for 3 of the world's biggest religions. It contains some of the most powerful and influential stories humanity has ever told.
So first things first, let's get our terms straight so we're all on the same page. The word Pentateuch comes from Greek, and it literally just means 5 scrolls. Now in the Jewish tradition, these exact same 5 books, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, are called the Torah, which is a Hebrew word for teaching or law. So 2 different names, but they're pointing to the very same foundational collection of writings.
And these books, wow, they tell the story of creation itself, of patriarchs and prophets, of slavery and incredible freedom. But here's the twist. The story of who actually wrote them, and when, and why, well, that's a whole other mystery. And it is a fascinating one that we are going to unpack today.
But before we get to the mystery, you gotta understand the story itself. And it is an epic. The Pentateuch covers this absolutely massive sweep of time, and in doing so, it sets up the entire worldview and history of the nation of Israel.
I mean, just take a look at this timeline. The scale here is kind of mind-blowing. We're talking about a story that kicks off at the literal dawn of time, weaves through the lives of figures like Abraham around 2000 BC, and then has its huge climactic moment around 1500 BC with Moses leading the Exodus from Egypt. This isn't just one story. It's the entire history of a people, spanning thousands of years, all packed into these first 5 books.
The whole journey kicks off with Genesis, which is exactly what it sounds like, the book of beginnings. It lays out the creation of the entire world, humanity's first big mistake, and then it zooms way in on the story of just one family, starting with a man named Abraham. It follows his descendants and ends with them all settled down in Egypt. From there, the action really ramps up in Exodus. Fast forward a few generations, and those descendants of Abraham, they're now slaves in Egypt. This book is all about their absolutely dramatic escape, led by Moses. You've got everything from the parting of the Red Sea to receiving the 10 Commandments, which is the moment that seals their formal agreement, their covenant with God.
Okay, so you've just been freed from slavery. Now what? How are you supposed to live? That's where Leviticus comes in. You can think of it as a manual for holiness. It lays out all the laws for sacrifice, for purity, for worship. It's basically the instruction manual for how this brand new nation is supposed to live in a relationship with a holy God.
Next up is the book of Numbers, and this part of the story chronicles a really difficult journey. After a major act of rebellion right on the edge of the Promised Land, the Israelites are condemned to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. It's a tough story, full of consequences and failures, but also one that shows God's faithfulness through it all.
And this whole grand narrative wraps up with Deuteronomy. The name literally means second law, and that's a perfect description. The whole book is basically Moses' farewell address. He's giving a series of powerful speeches to a brand new generation, the kids who were born in the wilderness, reminding them of their laws, their history, and their purpose, all to get them ready to finally enter the Promised Land.
So there you have it, this incredible, sprawling, but surprisingly unified story. But who actually wrote it? And this is where things take a really interesting turn into one of the biggest debates in all of biblical scholarship.
This question right here is the heart of the whole mystery. The very end of Deuteronomy describes the death and burial of Moses in pretty specific detail, so how could he have written that part? This one little inconsistency has sparked centuries of debate and forced scholars to look at these texts in a completely new light. This question basically leads to 2 major viewpoints. On one hand, you have the traditional view, which has been central to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam for centuries. It holds that Moses, as a prophet of God, wrote all 5 books under divine inspiration. But on the other hand, many modern scholars argue that the Pentateuch is actually the work of multiple anonymous authors writing over hundreds of years, and they point to things like different writing styles, different names for God, and even contradictions in the text as evidence.
Now, the leading scholarly theory is something called the documentary hypothesis. It sounds complicated, but the basic idea is that the Pentateuch is woven together from at least 4 different sources. Scholars have given them nicknames. There's the J source, where God seems very personal and human-like, the E source, which focuses a lot on prophets and dreams, the D source, which has a very moralistic tone, and finally, the P source, which is really concerned with laws, covenants, and the priesthood. Each one has its own unique voice and focus.
So, whether it was written by one author or 4, or some combination, the Pentateuch tells a remarkably coherent story. So what's the glue? What are the powerful themes that weave all 5 of these books into one single powerful narrative?
Well, across all 5 books, you see these core ideas popping up again and again, tying it all together. There's the absolute sovereignty of God as the creator of everything. There's the idea of covenant, these binding, sacred promises between God and people. You see constant themes of redemption and rescue, and a persistent call for the people to be holy, to be set apart. And it almost always comes back to that huge 3-part promise made to Abraham: land, descendants, and a blessing for the entire world.
And really, this quote from Genesis is the key that unlocks the whole thing. This one promise to Abraham is what sets the entire plot of the Pentateuch, and really the rest of the Bible in motion. The journey for a promised land, the creation of a nation, and this ultimate mission to be a blessing to all of humanity, it all starts right here.
The complexity of how it was written, the depth of its ideas, it all points to one thing: the incredible, undeniable, and lasting impact of these 5 books on all of human history.
You know, it is almost impossible to overstate just how influential the Pentateuch is. This isn't just some dusty old document. It is the living, breathing, foundational scripture for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Its laws have shaped legal systems around the globe, its stories have inspired countless works of art, and its moral vision continues to guide the daily lives of billions of people.
So in the end, what is the Pentateuch? Is it a perfect, word-for-word divine revelation? Is it a complex tapestry woven together by very human hands over many centuries? Or maybe it's something in between, a timeless story of God and humanity that continues to ask us the biggest questions imaginable. Who are we and why are we here? Now that is a question worth exploring.